Amidst diplomatic tensions and economic disruption between the United States and Canada, nationalism has been displayed. Though President Trump's remarks about Canada potentially becoming a U.S. state and 25% tariffs on Canadian imports have led to strong reactions from Canadian leaders and citizens. However, Canada retaliated with similar tariffs and a boycott of U.S. goods, impacting American industries. But how is Canada strengthening its sovereignty? And with rising inflation and strained relations, what significant challenges are the two nations facing? Come with us to unveil the 51st state dream. Shattered as Canada breaks free, Trump falters, and America scrambles. Diplomatic ties between the United States and Canada have reached a boiling point, with tensions fueled by President Donald Trump's provocative language and aggressive trade policies. Trump's frequent mention of Canada as America's 51st state and his imposition of severe tariffs on Canadian goods have sparked widespread outrage in Canada. The fallout has strained relations between the two historically close allies, with Canadian officials and citizens alike condemning Trump's remarks as disrespectful and provocative. The inflammatory 51st state narrative reportedly began during a meeting in November 2024 between Trump and former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. According to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Trump suggested that if Canada struggled economically under the weight of U.S. tariffs, it might consider joining the United States as a solution. Rubio recounted that Trump argued such a move would bolster Canada's economic stability, adding fuel to what many Canadians already perceived as an overbearing and dismissive attitude from the Trump administration. Since that meeting, Trump has repeatedly reiterated the idea, often portraying it as a practical solution to economic disparities between the two nations. For Canadians, however, these comments are not just flippant remarks. They are seen as a profound affront to their sovereignty and identity. Consequently, the Canadian reaction has been strong and loud. Liberal MP Charlie Angus tabled a scathing condemnation of Trump's comment, condemning them and the accompanying levies as an act of war. Angus's move is indicative of a widespread outrage and feeling of betrayal that exists across Canada today, where Trump's words are seen as an expression of a deeper disrespect for Canadian sovereignty. Trump's words and actions not only hurt bilateral relations, but also ignited a fire of nationalism in Canada. The people have rallied around their leaders, and most of them have found pride in embracing a revived tide of pride in the country's unique identity. Meanwhile, demands for Canada to diversify its trade and end its reliance on the United States have become louder, proposing an enduring realignment of the geopolitics of the two countries. In the face of these tensions, experts warn that repairing the relationship will require significant diplomatic efforts and a willingness to rebuild trust. For now, however, Trump's 51st state comments and the economic strain of tariffs have pushed Canada and the United States into one of the most strained periods in their modern history. The imposition of severe tariffs on Canadian products has further fueled these tensions. Canadian industries and sectors, notably manufacturing and agriculture, have been severely affected, leading the Canadian government to retaliate. The economic impact has further widened the gulf, transforming what used to be a mutually beneficial trade relationship into a war zone of competing national interests. Donald Trump's belligerent words against the Canadian economy and his inflammatory utterance that Canada can equally become America's 51st state have tremendously insulted Canadians. It has generated a palpable reaction with Canadian vacationers canceling their trips to America en masse. Beyond tourism trends, the scandal seems to have had political consequences in Canada, radically shifting the agenda for the coming parliamentary elections. Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal Party, which some months ago was expected to perform miserably, has soared in popularity as a result of a surge in nationalistic fervor and outrage at what is seen as American imperialism. The U.S. has long been a favored destination for Canadian travelers, with the U.S. Travel Association noting that Canadians accounted for a staggering 20.4 million visits in the past year, contributing $20.5 billion to the American economy. Despite this historically strong tourism relationship, Trump's presidency has coincided with a steep decline in international visitors to the U.S., and Canadians are no exception. The impact has been stark. U.S. Customs and Border Protection data reveals that over 910,000 fewer Canadians crossed the land border into the U.S. last month compared to March 2024, representing a dramatic 22% drop. Similarly, Air Canada has reported a 10% decline in flight bookings to U.S. destinations for the peak travel period of April through September. Trump, however, seems unfazed by the downturn. Addressing the issue, he dismissed concerns about the declining tourism figures, attributing them to what he described as a little nationalism among Canadians. He downplayed the significance of the shift, stating, "It's not a big deal." For Canadians, though, it appears to be a big deal. Trump's remarks have struck a nerve, galvanizing public opinion and reframing political narratives. Although the second term of Donald Trump's presidency has been marked by a series of high-profile incidents at U.S. border crossings, it has intensified unease among Canadians about their southern neighbor. Among the most alarming reports are cases of tourists and professionals being detained for extended periods at immigration facilities before being sent home at their own expense. These stories have fueled a growing sense of mistrust and discomfort, undermining what was once a robust and friendly cross-border relationship. A telling anecdote was brought to light on March 3rd, when Canadian actress and business owner Jasmine Mooney was arrested by San Diego border agents in the United States, legally on a visa. Mooney was detained for 12 days before she was released, a traumatic experience that attests to Canadians' lack of certainty when visiting the United States. Prior to Mooney's release, British Columbia Premier David Eby expressed the fear bestowed upon Canadians by such events. It certainly reinforces anxiety that many Canadians have about our relationship with the U.S. right now and the unpredictability of this administration and its actions, Eby remarked, echoing a broader sentiment of frustration and unease. Compounding the unease is the warning released by the Canadian Association of University Teachers, CAUT, a massive group representing faculty and staff at Canadian universities, citing the political climate of Trump's America and growing stories about Canadians experiencing issues at the border. CAUT cautioned against travel to the U.S. for non-essential purposes. The warning is also a growing consciousness of the reality that contemporary climatic conditions pose danger to travelers and scholars engaged in intellectual and business pursuits. Also, the Canadian Association of University Teachers, CAUT, has highlighted that academics who have publicly criticized the Trump administration have been advised to exercise special caution when traveling to the U.S. This warning reflects fears of heightened scrutiny and potential retaliation, further straining the freedom of movement that has historically characterized the Canada-U.S. relationship. Former Quebec Premier Jean Charest encapsulated the frustration and bewilderment many Canadians feel. People are scared to cross the border, Charest said. I don't know what Americans are thinking, quite frankly. Are they that oblivious? Charest, who has family ties in Florida, voiced concerns that resonate deeply with Canadians reluctant to travel south. Mike Sauer, who manages a community policing center in Vancouver, represents a growing demographic opting to avoid the U.S. altogether due to political tensions and fears of intrusive border practices. One of Sauer's main concerns is the potential for U.S. border agents to inspect his cell phone and uncover his history of marijuana purchases. While cannabis is legal in Canada and most U.S. states, it remains illegal under federal law in the United States, so it remains a jurisdictionally uncertain area likely to cause unnecessary headaches. The states have a different view on drugs, Sauer noted. They could certainly look at my phone and see I'm 420 friendly. I think it kind of depends on which border guard would have a problem with that and which ones wouldn't. Deetra and Ben Wilson, a couple from Windsor, Ontario, once enjoyed frequent trips to nearby Detroit, but the shifting border climate has dulled their enthusiasm for cross-border visits. Deetra, 32, expressed unease over border protocol uncertainty, particularly since Trump returned to office. It's worrisome, she admitted. Her husband, Ben, 37, shares her hesitation. Reflecting on the risks of heightened border scrutiny, he remarked, "Why would I want to? Regardless of the tariffs, if I'm going to be stopped at the border for my phone or something somebody texted me, why go?" These stories illustrate a broader trend of Canadians reevaluating the risks and rewards of U.S. travel. The mixture of unpredictable border policing, intrusive searches, and a charged political environment has taken away the tranquility of safety and convenience that once characterized travel between the two countries. To many eyes, America is no longer a friendly next-door neighbor of recent memory, and the ramifications go far beyond personal travel choices. Indeed, Canadian travel to the United States has fallen so drastically already that some of America's states have taken immediate and calculated action. California Governor Gavin Newsom is one of them, a longtime critic of Donald Trump, and who recently initiated an ad campaign welcoming Canadians back to the Golden State. Newsom referenced a 12% year-over-year decline in Canadian visitors for the month of February as a primary driver of the initiative, speaking to the economic impact of reduced cross-border travel. The impact on the travel industry has been substantial. Mackenzie McMillan, a Vancouver travel agency representative for the travel group, painted a grim landscape of business today. "We have had a virtual collapse in U.S. business," stated McMillan, projecting an enormous 90% drop in bookings to the U.S. since February. The dramatic drop represents a seismic shift in travel patterns, with Canadians opting for other destinations or simply remaining at home. Leslie Keeter, CEO and founder of the Travel Lady Agency in Calgary, echoes this sentiment. Keeter noted an increasing number of clients willing to forfeit their deposits and payments just to avoid traveling to the United States. Even if they're going on a Caribbean cruise, they don't want to go down to Fort Lauderdale to get on the cruise ship, she explained. This aversion to even brief transits through U.S. airports highlights the depth of Canadian apprehension. The effects of these losses run deeper than the individual instances. They predict a receding Canadian-American trust, which has broad implications for economic and cultural relations. Aspects of the convenience of travel that Canadians once enjoyed are now more undermined by uncertainty and fear of differential treatment, raising questions about the general trajectory of cross-border trust under Trump. The reluctance to travel to the U.S. is due to various factors: uncertainty at the border, intrusive search processes, and general unease with the politics of the Trump era. These factors are not merely precipitating minor inconvenience. They are actually reshaping travel habits and redirecting tourism spending away from the U.S. and onto other foreign destinations. For a state like California, this is serious business. Canadian visitors have been a steady economic bedrock, and their absence is deeply felt across sectors from hospitality to retail. Newsom's bid to reinstate Canadian tourists proves him attuned to the large picture. But reversing this will take more than marketing. It will likely demand systemic changes to rebuild trust and restore Canadian travelers' sense of safety and welcome. Until then, the U.S. risks becoming a destination Canadians increasingly avoid. Moreover, given the escalating economic pressures and fractured diplomacy, can Canada and the U.S. find a path to reconciliation, or are we witnessing the beginning of a long-term estrangement between these two close neighbors? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.